I burst through that bedroom door and saw my daughter-in-law's face turn white as a sheet when I pressed play on that video, and let me tell you, what happened next changed everything in my family forever. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and I never thought I'd be standing in my own home, confronting the two people I trusted most in this world about a plan to throw me away like yesterday's garbage. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, because the truth is always more complicated than it seems, and this story, well, it's been building up for longer than I even realized. It was a cold November evening in Portland, Oregon, just 3 days before Thanksgiving, and the rain was coming down in that steady, persistent way it does in the Pacific Northwest, drumming against the windows of the two-story Craftsman home I'd lived in for 43 years. The house smelled like the apple cider I'd been simmering on the stove all afternoon, mixed with the faint scent of the cedar wood that my late husband Thomas had used to panel the den back in the 90s. I'd spent the whole day preparing for the holiday, making lists, planning the menu, checking and rechecking everything, because I wanted this Thanksgiving to be perfect. My son David and his wife Jennifer had been living with me for the past 8 months, ever since David lost his job as a software engineer during the tech layoffs that hit our city hard. They'd moved into the upstairs bedroom, the one with the bay window that overlooks the garden Thomas and I planted together 30 years ago. I want to pause here for just a moment because if you're listening to this story and finding yourself drawn into what happened to me, I'd really appreciate it if you could help this channel grow by clicking that subscribe button. We're working toward reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world to me. It's a simple click, but it makes such a difference in helping us share more stories like this one. Now, let me continue with what happened that night, because trust me, you won't believe where this is heading. I'd always had a good relationship with Jennifer, or at least I thought I did. She was 34, worked as a marketing manager for a local brewery, and had been married to my David for 6 years. They'd met at a coffee shop in the Pearl District, one of those chance encounters that seemed like fate at the time. Jennifer was stylish, always put together, with her dark hair cut in a sleek bob and her wardrobe full of those expensive brands I'd only seen in magazine advertisements. She had a way of smiling that didn't quite reach her eyes, something I'd noticed early on but dismissed because I wanted so badly to have a good relationship with my daughter-in-law. David was my only child, you see. My husband Thomas had passed away from a heart attack 4 years earlier, sudden and shocking, leaving me alone in this big house with nothing but memories and the occasional visit from David and Jennifer on holidays. When they asked to move in after David lost his job, I didn't hesitate for a second. Family is family, right? That's what I was raised to believe. My parents were Irish immigrants who settled in Boston before moving west, and they taught me that you never turn your back on blood. So I opened my home, cleared out the guest room, helped them pack up their apartment in the trendy Northwest District, and welcomed them with open arms. Jennifer had been sweet about it at first, thanking me repeatedly, bringing me flowers from the farmer's market, cooking dinner a few times a week. But as the months wore on, I started noticing small changes. The way she'd sigh heavily when I'd suggest we watch a movie together. The eye rolls when I'd talk about my volunteer work at the community center. The whispered conversations that would stop abruptly when I entered a room. David had changed too, and that hurt even more than Jennifer's coldness. My son, my baby boy who used to climb into my lap and tell me about his dreams of becoming an astronaut, had become distant and irritable. He spent most of his time locked in the upstairs bedroom, applying for jobs online, his face illuminated by the blue glow of his laptop screen. When he did come downstairs, he barely looked at me, mumbling one-word answers to my questions about how his day went or whether he'd heard back from any potential employers. I told myself it was the stress of unemployment, the blow to his pride, the uncertainty of the future. I made excuses for both of them because the alternative, admitting that something was fundamentally wrong, was too painful to consider. The night everything changed started out ordinary enough. I'd spent the afternoon at the grocery store, buying ingredients for Thanksgiving dinner. I'd planned an elaborate menu: roasted turkey with herb butter, homemade stuffing with cranberries and pecans, green bean casserole, sweet potato pie, and my mother's famous Irish soda bread. I was determined to create a warm, loving holiday, to remind David and Jennifer of what family meant, to show them that despite the hardships, we still had each other. I came home with bags full of groceries, my arms aching from carrying them in from the car through the pouring rain. The house was quiet when I walked in, which wasn't unusual. David and Jennifer often kept to themselves upstairs. I put away the groceries, started the cider on the stove, and settled into my favorite armchair in the living room with a book I'd been trying to finish for weeks. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, and I remember feeling a sense of peace, of anticipation for the holiday ahead. Around 9 o'clock, I decided to head upstairs to bed. I'd been having trouble sleeping lately, something my doctor attributed to stress and the natural changes that come with aging. So, I'd gotten into the habit of taking a melatonin tablet and reading in bed until I felt drowsy enough to sleep. I climbed the stairs slowly, my knees protesting each step. The upstairs hallway was dimly lit, and I could see a strip of light under David and Jennifer's bedroom door. If you're still listening and this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, I want to ask you to take just 1 second and click that subscribe button below this video. We're so close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription helps us grow this community. Your support lets us know you want to hear more real stories like mine. It takes just a moment, but it means everything to us. Thank you, and now let me tell you what I heard next, because this is where everything fell apart. As I approached my bedroom door, which was just a few feet from theirs, I heard voices. At first, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just walking past, minding my own business, but something about the tone stopped me in my tracks. Jennifer's voice was sharp, urgent, cutting through the quiet hallway like a knife. I couldn't make out the words at first, so I moved closer to their door, my heart beginning to pound in my chest with an anxiety I couldn't name. And then I heard it, clear as day, Jennifer's voice saying, "After Thanksgiving, he goes straight to the nursing home." I froze, my hand on my own doorknob, my body turning cold despite the warmth of the house. David's voice responded, quieter, hesitant. "Are you sure about this?" It seemed so sudden. I mean, she's not that old, Mom's only 68. Jennifer's laugh was harsh, bitter. "Not that old? David, she's becoming a burden. She's always here, always in our space, always wanting to chat and do things together. We can't build our life with her hovering over us constantly. And once you get a new job, we need to move out and start fresh, but we can't leave her here alone. She'll guilt-trip you into staying forever. The nursing home is the best solution. She'll be taken care of and we'll be free." My legs felt like they might give out beneath me. I leaned against the wall, pressing my palm against the cool surface to steady myself. This couldn't be happening. They were talking about me like I was some kind of problem to be solved, some obstacle standing in the way of their happiness. I thought back to all the sacrifices I'd made, taking them in when they had nowhere else to go, never asking for rent or compensation, cooking their meals, doing their laundry, trying to make their lives easier during a difficult time. And this was how they saw me? As a burden? David spoke again. "What about the house?" His mother's house, her home. Jennifer's response was immediate. "We'll handle that after. Maybe she'll agree to sell it and use the money for the nursing home costs. If not, we'll figure something out. The important thing is getting her out of our hair." "After Thanksgiving, David." "We tell her after Thanksgiving. That gives us a few days to research facilities and make the arrangements." I felt something break inside me, some fundamental trust that I'd held on to my entire life. The idea that family meant something, that love was unconditional, that the people you raised and nurtured would care for you in return. It was all shattering like glass around me. But alongside the heartbreak came something else. Anger. A hot, righteous fury that started in my gut and spread through my entire body. I wasn't going to let them do this. I wasn't going to be shipped off to some facility, like an unwanted piece of furniture. I needed proof, evidence of what I'd just heard, because I knew that if I confronted them right now, in this moment, they'd deny it. They'd gaslight me, tell me I'd misheard, make me question my own sanity. So I turned around as quietly as I could and crept back downstairs, my mind racing with possibilities. I knew exactly what I needed to do. Thomas had installed a home security system years ago, one with cameras and audio recording capabilities. We'd mainly used it for the exterior of the house, to monitor for break-ins, but Thomas, being the thorough man he was, had also installed a small camera in the upstairs hallway. He'd been worried about our safety, wanted to be able to check the footage if anything ever seemed off. I'd almost forgotten about it after he died, rarely checking the app on my phone because what was the point when I lived alone? But now, that camera was going to be my salvation. I went to the kitchen, grabbed my phone from where I'd left it charging on the counter, and opened the security app. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely navigate the interface. I found the hallway camera, rewound the footage to about 10 minutes earlier, and turned up the volume. There it was, crystal clear. Jennifer's voice saying those terrible words, David's weak protests, their entire conversation about disposing of me like I was trash. I saved the footage, downloaded it to my phone, and then sent it to myself via email for backup. I wasn't taking any chances. Now, you might be wondering what I did next, and if you want to find out, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because stories like these need to be shared. Hit that red subscribe button and join our community as we work toward 1,000 subscribers together. Your click matters, and I'm so grateful to everyone who's already subscribed and supported this channel. Let's keep this community growing. Okay, back to that night and the confrontation that changed everything. I sat in the kitchen for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes, trying to calm my racing heart and figure out my next move. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, my mother's remedy for anxiety, and let the warm mug heat my cold hands. The rain outside had intensified, pounding against the roof with an almost violent intensity that matched the storm of emotions raging inside me. I thought about Thomas, about how he would have handled this situation. He'd always been the calm one, the rational voice in times of crisis. But Thomas wasn't here, and I had to be strong enough for both of us. I decided to wait until morning. I wanted David and Jennifer to have a peaceful night's sleep, their last one in this house where they felt comfortable enough to plot against me. I wanted them to wake up feeling secure, unsuspecting, because the shock of what I was about to do would be so much more effective that way. Call me vindictive if you want, but after what I'd heard, I felt entitled to a little bit of strategic revenge. I finished my tea, rinsed the cup, and headed back upstairs. Their light was off now, the hallway dark except for the small night light I kept plugged in near the bathroom. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, and climbed into bed fully clothed. I didn't even pretend to try to sleep. I just lay there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain and planning. Morning came slowly, the gray November light filtering through my curtains around 7 o'clock. I heard David and Jennifer stirring in their room, the sound of their alarm clock, footsteps on the hardwood floor, the shower running. I waited until I heard them go downstairs, the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. Then I got up, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked tired, older than I had just yesterday, the bags under my eyes more pronounced, new lines etched around my mouth. But there was also something else in my reflection: determination. I wasn't going to be a victim in this story. I went downstairs to find David and Jennifer sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and looking at their phones. Jennifer was dressed for work in a navy blue blazer and white blouse, her makeup impeccable as always. David was still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in different directions, a 5 o'clock shadow darkening his jaw. They both looked up when I entered, and Jennifer gave me one of her fake smiles. "Good morning, Margaret. Did you sleep well?" I forced myself to smile back. Actually, I didn't. I heard some disturbing noises last night and couldn't get back to sleep. Nothing to worry about, though. I'm sure it was just the storm. After Jennifer left for work, I suggested to David that we spend some quality time together, just the two of us. We could watch a movie, I said, something we used to do when he was younger. David seemed surprised but pleased by the suggestion. "That sounds nice, Mom. I'd like that. Let me just send out these emails first." I nodded and went to the living room to wait, my heart pounding with anticipation. This was it. The moment of truth was coming. Here's where I want to ask you again, if you're invested in finding out what happened when I showed David that video, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. We're building something special here, a place where real stories are shared and real people connect. Click that subscribe button and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Every subscription is a vote of confidence in the work we're doing, and I can't tell you how much it means. Now, let me tell you about the confrontation that tore my family apart. Around 11 o'clock, David came into the living room and settled onto the couch next to me. I'd already set everything up, connected my phone to the TV using the casting feature, queued up the video I'd saved from the security camera. My palms were sweating, and I wiped them on my jeans, trying to appear calm. "So, what movie are we watching?" David asked, reaching for the bowl of popcorn I'd made. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find traces of the boy I'd raised in this stranger's face. "Actually, I want to show you something else first. Something I think you need to see." David's expression shifted from relaxed to confused. "Okay, what is it?" I pressed play without answering. The TV screen lit up with the footage from the hallway camera, the timestamp showing the previous night's date and time. At first, David didn't understand what he was looking at, but then the audio started, and I watched his face drain of color as he heard Jennifer's voice. After Thanksgiving, he goes straight to the nursing home. The video continued, every damning word preserved in perfect clarity, and David's mouth fell open in shock. When it finished, I paused the screen and turned to face him. "So, when exactly were you planning to tell me about this?" David's face had gone from white to red, a flush creeping up his neck. "Mom, I can explain. This isn't what it sounds like." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really? Because it sounds like you and your wife were planning to throw me into a nursing home so you could take over my house. Please, enlighten me on how I'm misunderstanding." David stood up, pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. "Jennifer has been stressed. She's been carrying us financially, and she's frustrated. But Mom, I never agreed to any of this. You heard me on that video. I was questioning her about it." I shook my head. "You were questioning the logistics, David, not the premise. You asked if I was too young, not if it was wrong. You talked about my house like it was already yours to figure out. Don't stand there and pretend you're innocent in this." The front door opened then, and Jennifer walked in, home earlier than expected. "She must have forgotten something," she called out. "David, I forgot my presentation folder. Have you seen it?" Then she entered the living room and froze when she saw the paused video on the TV screen, her face in mid-sentence captured on the display. The color drained from her face so quickly, I thought she might actually faint. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. What is that?" I stood up, facing her directly. "That's a recording from last night. You remember last night, don't you, Jennifer? When you were planning to ship me off to a nursing home after Thanksgiving." Jennifer's eyes darted between me, David, and the screen. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You were spying on us? That's illegal. That's invasion of privacy. If you're riveted by this confrontation and want to see how it all ends, please hit that subscribe button. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us share more stories from real people dealing with real situations. Subscribe now and be part of this growing community. Let's continue with what happened next because, trust me, you won't believe how this resolved." I crossed my arms over my chest. "This is my house, Jennifer. My house. I have every legal right to have security cameras anywhere I want. What's illegal is plotting to commit elder abuse, which is exactly what you were doing." Jennifer's shock was morphing into anger now. "Elder abuse? You're not being abused. We were trying to find you proper care." I stepped closer to her. "Proper care? I'm 68 years old. I'm in perfect health. I volunteer 3 days a week. I take care of this entire house and both of you. And you think I need to be in a nursing home? The only thing I need proper care from is toxic people like you." David tried to intervene. "Mom, please, let's all calm down and talk about this rationally." I whirled on him. "Rationally? You want to talk rationally? Okay, let's be rational. You and Jennifer have lived in my home rent-free for 8 months. I've cooked your meals, done your laundry, supported you emotionally and financially while you looked for work. And instead of gratitude, instead of respect, I get conspired against in my own house. Tell me, David, what part of that is rational?" Jennifer found her voice again, and it was sharp with defensiveness. "You want gratitude? Fine. Thank you, Margaret, for making us feel like children, for hovering over us constantly, for treating us like we can't take care of ourselves. Thank you for making me feel like a guest in what should be our home, too. I felt like I'd been slapped. Your home? This was never your home, Jennifer. This was my generosity, my kindness, which apparently you mistook for weakness. The argument escalated from there, voices rising, years of unspoken resentments bubbling to the surface. Jennifer accused me of being controlling and manipulative, of using my widowhood to guilt David into staying close. David tried to play peacemaker, but mostly just stood there looking miserable, caught between his mother and his wife. I held my ground, pointing out every instance where I'd bent over backward to accommodate them, every sacrifice I'd made, every boundary I'd let them cross because I wanted to help. Finally, I said what needed to be said. I want you both out of my house by the end of the week. Jennifer's eyes widened. You're kicking us out? Right before Thanksgiving? I met her gaze steadily. Yes, I am. You wanted to be free of me so badly? Congratulations. You're free. David looked devastated. Mom, please. We have nowhere to go. I don't have a job yet. We can't afford an apartment. I felt my resolve waver for just a moment, looking at my son's anguished face, but then I remembered what I'd heard, the casual cruelty in their voices, and I steeled myself. You should have thought about that before you decided I was disposable. You're both adults. Figure it out. And David, you can start by showing your wife the same loyalty she clearly doesn't show me. Jennifer grabbed her purse and the folder she'd come back for. Fine. We'll leave.
Come on, David.
We don't need her anyway. But David didn't move immediately. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Mom.
I really am.
I didn't want this to happen. A part of me wanted to pull him into my arms, to forgive him, to make everything okay, like I'd done 1,000 times when he was growing up. But I couldn't. Not this time. I know you're sorry, David. But sorry doesn't fix this. You're a grown man and you made your choices. Now you have to live with them. They left that afternoon, throwing their belongings into suitcases and garbage bags, loading up their car in the rain. I watched from the window as they drove away, and I won't lie to you. I cried. I cried for the relationship I'd lost with my son, for the family I'd thought we were, for the grandmother I might never get to be if they had children someday. But I also felt something else. Relief. Relief that I'd stood up for myself, that I hadn't let them bully me into accepting mistreatment, that I'd valued my own dignity enough to say no. Before we wrap up this story, I want to ask one more time for your support. If this story moved you, if it made you think about family dynamics and standing up for yourself, please subscribe to this channel. We're working hard to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your click makes all the difference. Help us build a community where real stories matter. Subscribe now, and thank you for being here. The days following their departure were strange. The house felt too quiet, too empty, echoing with silence instead of the tension that had filled it for months. I went through the motions of preparing for Thanksgiving, even though I'd be spending it alone, because giving up on the holiday felt like admitting defeat. I cooked a small turkey, made a modest amount of stuffing, baked a sweet potato pie. On Thanksgiving Day, I set the table for one, said a prayer of gratitude for my strength and independence, and ate my meal in peaceful solitude. David called 2 days after Thanksgiving. They'd been staying with Jennifer's sister in Vancouver, Washington, sleeping on a pull-out couch in her basement. He sounded tired and humbled. Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. Jennifer and I have been talking too, and I realize how badly we messed up. I listened without interrupting, letting him get it all out. I let Jennifer's frustration become my frustration, and I stopped seeing you as my mother and started seeing you as an obstacle. That was wrong. It was incredibly wrong, and I'm ashamed of myself. I appreciated the apology, but I wasn't ready to forgive completely. I'm glad you've had time to reflect, David. But you need to understand that what happened damaged our relationship in a fundamental way. Trust doesn't come back overnight. He agreed, I know. And I'm not asking you to let us move back in, or anything like that. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and I'm working on being better. I actually got a job offer yesterday. It's not as high-paying as my old position, but it's a start. Jennifer and I are going to get our own place, and we're going to therapy to work on our communication. That conversation was the first of many. Over the following months, David and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. He came by for lunch once a week, just him, and we talked about everything: the hurt, the misunderstandings, the expectations we'd both failed to communicate clearly. Jennifer sent me a written apology letter, admitting that she'd been cruel and short-sighted, that she'd projected her own family issues onto our situation. I didn't develop a close relationship with her after that, probably never will, but we reached a civil understanding. The experience taught me something valuable about boundaries and self-worth. I'd spent so much of my life putting others first, especially after Thomas died, trying to fill the void with people-pleasing and accommodation. But standing up for myself, refusing to be mistreated, it didn't make me selfish or bitter. It made me stronger. It reminded me that I had value independent of what I could do for others, that my home and my peace were worth protecting. I still live in my house, still volunteer at the community center, still make my mother's Irish soda bread and Thomas's favorite apple cider. David got promoted at his new job and eventually moved into a nice apartment with Jennifer in the suburbs. We celebrate holidays together now, but there's a healthy distance, a respect for boundaries that didn't exist before. I've made new friends through my volunteer work, joined a book club, taken up watercolor painting. My life is full and meaningful on my own terms. The video I recorded that night remains saved on my phone, not because I need it as evidence anymore, but as a reminder. A reminder that when you hear something that breaks your heart, you don't have to pretend it didn't happen. You don't have to make excuses for people who hurt you, even if they're family. Sometimes love means holding people accountable. Sometimes family means knowing when to walk away, at least temporarily, to preserve your own well-being. I share this story not for sympathy, but because I know there are others out there facing similar situations. Adult children who take advantage of aging parents, relatives who see generosity as weakness, family members who forget that respect should flow in all directions. If you're in that situation, I want you to know that you have the right to set boundaries, to demand respect, to protect your home and your peace. Age doesn't make you less deserving of dignity. Kindness doesn't obligate you to accept mistreatment. And if you're the adult child in this scenario, if you've been taking your parents for granted or seeing their help as an entitlement rather than a gift, I hope my story gives you pause. Parents aren't perfect, and sometimes they can be overbearing or difficult, but most of the time they're just trying to help, to stay connected, to matter in your life. Before you make plans that exclude them or diminish them, ask yourself if that's really the person you want to be. Ask yourself if you're solving a problem or creating a wound that might never fully heal. The rain still drums against my windows on gray Portland days, and sometimes I sit in my armchair with a book and a cup of tea and think about everything that happened. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret demanding better treatment. But I also don't regret leaving the door open for reconciliation, for growth, for the possibility that people can change and relationships can heal. Life is complicated, family is messy, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve while still hoping for better. Looking back now, I realize that the confrontation was just the beginning of a much longer journey toward understanding myself and what I truly needed for my relationships. The weeks following Thanksgiving were some of the loneliest I'd experienced since Thomas passed away, but they were also strangely liberating. For the first time in months, I could walk through my own home without feeling like I was intruding on someone else's space. I could watch television in the living room without worrying about disturbing anyone. I could cook meals that I actually wanted to eat instead of catering to David's preferences or Jennifer's dietary restrictions. The silence that had initially felt oppressive gradually transformed into something peaceful, even sacred. I spent a lot of time during those weeks reflecting on how I'd gotten to that point. When had I stopped being a person with my own needs and desires and become simply a service provider for my son and his wife? I traced it back to Thomas's death, to that moment when the foundation of my world had crumbled and I desperately needed to feel needed by someone. David had been supportive during my grieving process, calling regularly, visiting on weekends, making sure I wasn't completely alone. But somewhere along the way, my gratitude for his attention had morphed into a willingness to accept whatever crumbs of affection he offered, even when those crumbs came with conditions and expectations that diminished my worth. The house itself seemed to come alive again during this period. I started projects I'd been putting off for years, repainting the guest bathroom in a cheerful yellow that Thomas would have hated, but that made me smile every time I walked past it. I cleaned out the garage, donating boxes of old belongings that I'd been clinging to out of sentiment rather than genuine attachment. I rearranged the furniture in the living room, creating a reading nook by the window where I could watch the rain and lose myself in novels. Each small change felt like an act of reclamation, a way of reminding myself that this was my space, my sanctuary, and I had every right to shape it according to my own vision. My friends from the community center noticed the change in me too. Barbara, a widow around my age who volunteered in the literacy program, commented one afternoon that I seemed lighter somehow, more present. We were sorting donations for the winter clothing drive, folding sweaters and jackets into neat piles, and her observation caught me off guard. Lighter? I asked, not sure if that was a compliment or a criticism. She nodded, her wrinkled hands smoothing a wool coat. Yes, like you're not carrying as much weight on your shoulders. You seem more yourself, if that makes sense. I thought about her words as I drove home that evening, the December rain creating rivers on my windshield that the wipers struggled to clear. Did I seem more myself? The question haunted me because I wasn't entirely sure who myself was anymore. I'd been Thomas's wife for so long, and then Thomas's widow, and then David's mother trying desperately to maintain relevance in his adult life. But who was Margaret, separate from all those roles and relationships? The question both terrified and exhilarated me. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to remind you that subscribing to this channel really helps us grow and reach more people with stories like mine. We're working toward 1,000 subscribers, and each click brings us closer to that goal. If you've been listening and connecting with my journey, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. It's a simple action that makes a huge difference, and I'm grateful for every single person who joins this community. Now, let me tell you about the unexpected turn my story took in mid-December. David's weekly lunch visits had become a ritual I both looked forward to and dreaded. Part of me loved seeing my son, hearing about his new job in cybersecurity consulting, watching him slowly rebuild his confidence and sense of purpose. But another part of me remained guarded, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some sign that he hadn't really changed, but was just going through the motions of reconciliation. During one of these lunches, about 3 weeks before Christmas, David brought up a topic I hadn't expected. "Mom, I want to talk to you about something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond." I set down my sandwich, suddenly not hungry. "Okay, I'm listening." He took a deep breath, his fingers fidgeting with his napkin. "Jennifer and I have been in therapy, like I mentioned. Our therapist has been helping us understand the patterns that led to what happened, the assumptions we made, the communication failures on both sides." I nodded slowly, not sure where this was going. "That's good, David. I'm glad you're getting help." He continued, "One of the things that's come up in our sessions is the need for direct communication and clearing the air completely. There are things Jennifer wants to say to you, apologies she wants to make in person, but she's afraid you'll refuse to see her." My first instinct was defensiveness. Why should I make things comfortable for Jennifer after what she'd done? But then I thought about the work I'd been doing on myself, the boundaries I'd established, the strength I'd discovered. Facing Jennifer didn't mean capitulating to her or pretending the hurt hadn't happened. It meant showing her that I was secure enough in my own worth to hear whatever she had to say without it destroying me. If Jennifer wants to talk to me, I'm willing to listen. But this happens on my terms, in my home, and only when I'm ready. David looked relieved. "Of course, Mom. Whatever you're comfortable with. How about next Saturday afternoon? I can be there too if you want, or I can leave you two alone." I considered the options. "You should be there. This involves all three of us, and we might as well address everything together." He agreed, and we set the time for 2 o'clock the following Saturday. After David left, I sat in my quiet house and wondered if I was making a mistake, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. But something inside me knew that this conversation needed to happen. That unfinished business had a way of festering if left unaddressed. Saturday arrived with crisp winter sunshine, a rare break from the constant rain that had defined the season. I spent the morning cleaning the house, not because it needed it, but because the physical activity helped calm my nerves. I baked ginger cookies, Thomas's favorite, and brewed a pot of strong coffee. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang, and I opened it to find David and Jennifer standing on my porch. Jennifer looked different than I remembered, smaller, somehow less polished. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. She looked tired and nervous, clutching a small wrapped package in her hands. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. The three of us settled in the living room, the same room where I'd confronted them with the video weeks earlier. The air felt thick with tension and unspoken words. Jennifer sat on the edge of the couch, her posture rigid, while David positioned himself between us, literally and figuratively trying to bridge the gap. I took my usual armchair and waited, letting the silence stretch until Jennifer was ready to speak. Finally, she cleared her throat. "Margaret, I want to start by saying that I'm deeply ashamed of my behavior and the pain I caused you. I've spent a lot of time in therapy trying to understand why I acted the way I did, but understanding doesn't excuse it. I was cruel, ungrateful, and disrespectful, and you deserved so much better." I listened without interrupting, watching her face as she spoke. There was genuine remorse there. I could see it, but I remained cautious. "What changed, Jennifer? Why the sudden awakening?" She looked down at her hands. "Honestly, losing your home forced me to confront some hard truths about myself. When we moved to my sister's basement, she asked me point-blank why we'd been kicked out. When I tried to spin it as you being unreasonable, she called me out. She said that you'd opened your home to us when we had nowhere else to go, and instead of being grateful, I treated you like an inconvenience." Hearing it from someone outside the situation made me realize how toxic my thinking had become. Jennifer continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I've had issues with my own mother for years. She's controlling and critical, always making me feel like I'm not good enough. When David and I moved in with you, I projected all those feelings onto you, even though you never acted like my mother. You were kind and generous, but I was so defensive, so determined not to be controlled, that I turned you into the enemy in my mind. That's not your fault, Margaret. That's my baggage, and I had no right to dump it on you. If you're finding this resolution as moving as I did, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of people who believe in the power of honest storytelling and real human connection. Your subscription helps us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers and allows us to share more stories that matter. Click that subscribe button now and be part of something meaningful. Thank you, and let's continue with how this conversation unfolded. I felt something shift inside me as Jennifer spoke. This wasn't the defensive, sharp-tongued woman I'd come to know over the past months. This was someone genuinely wrestling with her own demons and taking responsibility for the damage they'd caused. "I'm sorry about your relationship with your mother, Jennifer. That must be difficult. But you're right, I'm not your mother and I never tried to be. I just wanted to help you and David during a hard time." She nodded, tears beginning to stream down her face. "I know that now. And I'm so sorry for making you feel unwanted in your own home, for talking about you like you were disposable." The nursing home conversation, that was the lowest point in my life, and I will regret those words forever. I glanced at David, who was sitting very still, his eyes red-rimmed. He'd clearly heard this apology before, probably multiple times in therapy, but hearing it again in my presence seemed to affect him deeply. Jennifer held out the wrapped package. "I brought you something. It's not much, and it doesn't make up for anything, but I wanted you to have it." I took the package and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photograph, one I'd never seen before. It showed Thomas and me at David and Jennifer's wedding 6 years earlier, dancing together during the father-son-mother dance. Thomas was looking at me with such love and pride, and I was laughing at something he'd said. I'd forgotten this moment, forgotten how happy I'd felt that day, how full of hope for David's future. Jennifer's voice was soft. "David's cousin took that photo and sent it to me a few weeks ago. When I saw it, I realized what I'd almost destroyed. You and Thomas gave David a foundation of love and security that shaped him into the man I fell in love with. And instead of honoring that, instead of being grateful to be part of your family, I try to push you away. I'm so sorry, Margaret. I held the photograph, my vision blurring with tears. This was exactly the kind of gesture that could break through walls, that could remind me why forgiveness mattered even when it was difficult. Thank you, Jennifer. This means more than you know. We talked for another 2 hours that afternoon, working through the layers of misunderstanding and hurt that had accumulated. Jennifer explained the pressure she'd felt being the sole breadwinner, the resentment that had built up as her savings dwindled paying for their expenses. David admitted that he'd felt emasculated by his unemployment, that he'd withdrawn from both of us as a way of protecting his wounded ego. I shared my own feelings of invisibility and disposability, the fear that I'd become a burden to the people I loved most. The conversation wasn't easy, and there were moments of tension when old hurts resurfaced. But we pushed through, committed to honesty even when it was uncomfortable. By the time they left that evening, something fundamental had shifted. We hadn't erased the past, and we certainly hadn't restored complete trust, but we'd laid a foundation for moving forward. Jennifer hugged me before she left, a real hug, not the stiff, obligatory embraces she'd offered in the past, and whispered, "Thank you for giving me another chance." Christmas that year was different than I'd imagined. David and Jennifer invited me to their new apartment for dinner, a modest one-bedroom in a complex near David's office. Jennifer cooked a ham with roasted vegetables, and we exchanged small, thoughtful gifts. The evening was warm and genuine, free from the underlying tension that had poisoned our previous gatherings. As I drove home that night, the streets decorated with lights and the air crisp and cold, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The months that followed brought continued healing and growth for all of us. David got promoted to senior consultant at his firm, and Jennifer started her own marketing consultancy, working with local craft breweries and wineries. They began saving for a house, talking about their future with an excitement and unity I hadn't seen in them before. My relationship with both of them deepened, but in a healthier way this time, with clearer boundaries and more honest communication. I want to pause here and ask for your support one more time. If this story has resonated with you, if you've seen yourself or your family in these struggles and triumphs, please subscribe to this channel. We're so close to reaching 1,000 subscribers, and your click helps us continue sharing stories that matter. Real stories from real people dealing with real challenges. Subscribe now and join our growing community. Thank you. And now let me share the final chapter of this journey. The following summer, about 9 months after the confrontation that had changed everything, David and Jennifer invited me to a Sunday brunch at a restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. The day was gorgeous, one of those perfect Pacific Northwest summer days when the sun shines bright and the air smells like roses and fresh-cut grass. We sat on the outdoor patio, the river sparkling below us, boats gliding past with their colorful sails catching the breeze. The conversation flowed easily, touching on work, mutual friends, a vacation they were planning to the Oregon coast. Then, as we finished our meal, Jennifer reached across the table and took my hand. "Margaret, David and I have something we want to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. The gesture, the setting, the serious look on both their faces, it all pointed to one thing: we're pregnant. Jennifer's face broke into a radiant smile. 12 weeks along. We wanted to wait until we were past the first trimester to share the news. I felt a wave of emotion, so powerful it took my breath away. Joy, relief, gratitude, and a bittersweet ache that Thomas wasn't here to share this moment. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's wonderful. I'm going to be a grandmother. David was beaming. We know the timing is complicated, given everything that's happened. But we wanted you to know that this baby, your grandchild, is going to know their grandmother. Really know you, not as an obligation or a burden, but as the incredible woman you are. Jennifer squeezed my hand. I want our child to learn from you, Margaret. Your strength, your grace, your ability to forgive even when it's hard. You've taught me so much about who I want to be, and I want to pass that on to the next generation. We spent the rest of that afternoon talking about the baby, about names and nursery colors and all the dreams that come with expecting a new life. As I drove home later, the sunset painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this point. If someone had told me a year earlier that I'd be here, reconciled with my son and daughter-in-law, excited about becoming a grandmother, I wouldn't have believed them. The night I'd heard that terrible conversation through the bedroom door, I'd felt like my world was ending. But endings and beginnings are often two sides of the same coin. The ending of my old, unhealthy dynamic with David and Jennifer had made space for something new and better to grow. The video on my phone, the one I'd recorded that fateful night, I deleted it a few weeks after Jennifer's visit. I didn't need it anymore. I'd learned that holding on to evidence of past hurts doesn't protect you, it just keeps you tethered to pain. True protection comes from knowing your worth, from setting boundaries, and from having the courage to demand respect even from the people you love most. The baby arrived the following February, a girl they named Clara Margaret, combining Clara, Jennifer's grandmother's name, with my own. The first time I held her, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, I cried tears of pure joy. Watching David and Jennifer as new parents has been one of the great privileges of my later life. They're attentive and loving, working together as a team in a way they hadn't before their crisis. And they've made sure I'm an integral part of Clara's life, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. I babysit once a week, sing her the same lullabies I sang to David, read her the stories Thomas used to read. Sometimes, when I'm rocking her to sleep, I talk to her about her grandfather, about the garden he planted and the home he built, about the love that still echoes through the walls of my house. My life now looks different than I'd imagined it would when Thomas first passed away. I'm not the tragic widow desperately clinging to her son for purpose and meaning. I'm not the doormat, accepting mistreatment in exchange for proximity to family. I'm Margaret, a 69-year-old woman with interests and passions of my own, with friendships that fulfill me, with a family that respects me. I still live in my craftsman home, still volunteer at the community center, still make apple cider when the rain starts falling in autumn. But I do these things for myself now because they bring me joy, not because I'm trying to prove my worth to anyone. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to refuse to accept less than you deserve. Standing up for myself that night, confronting David and Jennifer with evidence of their betrayal, kicking them out of my home, these weren't acts of cruelty or vindictiveness. They were acts of self-preservation and ultimately, acts of love. Because by refusing to enable their disrespect, I forced them to confront their own behavior and grow from it. If I'd stayed silent, if I'd let them send me to a nursing home, we all would have lived with that toxicity forever. I share the ending of my story with hope that it encourages you, whoever you are, wherever you're facing your own family struggles. Change is possible. Growth is possible. Reconciliation is possible, but only when it's built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine accountability. Don't settle for relationships that diminish you. Don't accept treatment that makes you feel small or invisible or disposable. You deserve better, just as I did, just as we all do. And please, before you go, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, do it now. We've built this community together, sharing real stories from real people, and your subscription helps us continue this important work. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and every single click matters. Subscribe, like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your own experiences. Let's keep this conversation going, keep supporting each other through the challenges and triumphs of family life. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying with me through all its twists and turns. May you always have the courage to stand in your truth, to demand respect, and to believe in the possibility of redemption and renewal. This is Margaret, signing off with gratitude and hope for whatever comes next.